What are the top growth cities in America? Are people still moving to warm, sunny locations, or has that trend reversed? I'm Jason Kish. I'm in the commercial real estate investing space, and we're gonna look at the high growth areas, what's attracting people, and what that's doing to the real estate. I'm gonna refer to the business that everybody thinks of when they think of data and analytics, U-Haul. So it says here that the U-Haul Growth Index is compiled from well over 2.5 million annual one-way transactions across the US and Canada. So this doesn't necessarily mean that the numbers are exact, but I do think it's probably one of the best indicators. These are the top metros. We have Dallas at number 1, and they were number 1 last year, if you look here. Houston moved from number 9 to number 2, and Austin moved from number 5 up to number 3. I think something interesting to bring up right out of the gates is those markets there, Houston, not quite as bad, but Dallas and Austin, their multifamily real estate has really been hit over the past few years. And it goes to show that the values have not dropped because people aren't moving there anymore. It's because there was a ton of growth. People knew, the developers knew that these areas are growing and that they have a lot of job growth and other things that people like. So they actually built too many apartments too quickly when financing was cheap. We continue in the Sunbelt with Charlotte, Phoenix, Nashville, Charleston, Raleigh, Atlanta, and then we have Brownsville and McAllen, Texas. The top growth metros, according to U-Haul, all 10 of them are in the Sunbelt. I found that that's really interesting because a lot of those markets have had softness in the real estate sector, where the Northeast and Midwest has fared a lot stronger. But really, it does just come down to the overbuilding. So why are these areas growing so quickly? People can move for a myriad of reasons, but the thing that I think of immediately is jobs. Let's take a look at this interactive map from the Bureau of Labor Statistics to see if this has the answers that we're looking for. So let's just take a look at some of those top metros that we were looking at from the U-Haul data and see if it matches up with the job numbers. So let's start off by looking at where I live in Phoenix, and we'll see that we're up 0.7% in employment. So from 24 to 25, employment did grow at 0.7%. Let's look over at another market that I'm familiar with. That's Charlotte. It's had 2.7% growth, which is actually really high in 1 year. And then another North Carolina market, Raleigh, has grown 1.4%. Let's go down into Texas, where some of the top positions were. We'll start off with Houston. That's because it's the number 1 growth area. According to the BLS, growth there was 0.5%. In San Antonio, it's 1%. In Austin, it's almost 1%. And then in Dallas, it's 0.4%. So according to this data, yes, there is growth in jobs in all of those cities. It varies a lot, but let's just take a look, somewhere else. Let's just look at a dot here. Let's go with Cleveland. It's at negative 0.1% job growth, but the rent growth in Cleveland was actually the highest last year. It's really interesting how supply and demand, you really need both of them to figure out what's going on with pricing. Where Cleveland, it has very low supply, maybe not a ton of people moving in for the jobs, but because of the low supply, it's boosted the rents there. Most of the Sunbelt has had growth here, and I think that this would be something fun for you to play around with to see if what you're thinking about these different areas, if it's supported by the actual BLS data. So we're not seeing one-to-one, the more jobs, the more people have moved there, but we are seeing some correlation. So it's not just about strictly the amount of the jobs. For you to move across the country or to a different state or even a couple hours away in your same state, the job really has to be good enough to make somebody move. Houston, Dallas, and Austin are gaining Fortune 500 headquarters, and headquarters generally are moving from California to Texas on a pretty regular basis now. And this leads me to the next data point. What do businesses and individuals both try to avoid? They try to avoid too high of taxes. So let's look at a map from the Tax Foundation. I think that you'll see a common thread among some of the highest migration metros and what their state income tax looks like. What we're looking at here is the top rate of income tax that you could pay to each state. So you'll see it just jumps right off the page. California, clocking in at 13.3%. What about these gray ones? Why are these things gray instead of one of these other colors? Well, that's because they don't even have an income tax. They don't have a state income tax. There's a drastic difference between the highest state income tax states and the lowest state income tax states, with some of them not charging anything at all. Jobs and taxes are very big drivers, and so are the next two factors that I'll explain in one map. So what I'm showing you here is from Smart Asset, and they are showing the highest and lowest cost of living states. So you can see this is for an individual living alone and what it costs to live in each state. So you'll see along the coasts, California, Oregon, Washington, very expensive. On the other coast, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, places like that are generally pretty expensive. And you'll notice that Arizona, Texas, North Carolina, Florida, they're a little bit more affordable, even though they have really, really great job markets. Well, jobs don't really explain everything, because what about these states in the Midwest or, in the Central Plains? There is another category here, and that's people want to live somewhere that there's fun stuff to do, that it's sunny, nice weather, you can get out, you can really enjoy your time. Yes, Arizona and Texas and Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, they are more expensive than some of those Midwestern states, but I think that it's explained by the enjoyable warm weather that those have, and that actually explains some of the migration. And it also explains why, even though the coasts are really, really expensive, who doesn't love living right on the ocean, maybe looking at some mountains and the ocean? I do think that that's something that you need to think of when it comes to migration, because it does impact people, just that livability, if you will. Because the Sunbelt is still dominating the migration trends, does that mean that the Sunbelt rental and home prices are going through the roof right now? No, it actually doesn't. The Midwest and Northeast are experiencing solid single family and rent appreciation, where the South really hasn't as much. And that's because tight regulations restrict supply in New York, Boston, and other Northeastern cities. It doesn't make financial sense to build more homes in some of the Midwest, so the existing homes have seen a lot of appreciation, even though there's not a lot of major growth. Just think about a place where a lot of homes are $250,000 and it might cost $400,000 to build a similar home. You're just not going to add more inventory, so more people will be competing for the existing homes. Those Sunbelt multifamily values have been hit really hard by oversupply. Believe it or not, in Austin, Phoenix, Dallas, big growth cities, the value of multifamily apartments have been down, 30 to 50% from the peak. And that's just because there was a lot more building there, because they were projecting out the growth and money was cheap at one point. You can see how the decisions made by state and local governments have a huge impact on growth. And ultimately, those less regulated cities that people really enjoy living in, they have stayed more affordable and they're attracting more employers. So I personally, as a real estate investor, I'm taking advantage of this time where the values are a little bit lower in the Sunbelt, because I believe in the long-term growth of those areas. I'm curious to hear about what you're seeing out in the real world. Whether you live in the Sunbelt, are you still seeing that kind of growth? Or if you're in the Midwest or the Northeast, are you seeing the supply constrained and seeing those rent prices going up? Personally, I live in the Sunbelt in Phoenix, and I'm still feeling the growth momentum. I'm curious to hear about what you're seeing out in the real world, whether you're in the Northeast or in the Midwest and you're seeing that supply constraint and rents going up, or if you are in the Sunbelt and you're still seeing growth. Regardless of what you're seeing, I'd love to see you comment down below. Please like and subscribe because it helps the channel immensely. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.